Hello everybody, thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to show you how to replace a valve cover gasket slash valve cover on a 2013 BMW 3 Series. All the cars with the 4-cylinder is going to be like this. The engineering designation of that engine is called an N20. Alright guys, so first things first, you want to disconnect the battery if you're going to do this job, just because you can possibly hit some of the electrical cables on the side, and also we're going to have the fuel system undone, so if you happen to just nudge the car and wake it up, then it's going to squirt some fuel out. So you definitely want to disconnect the battery first, which is in the trunk on the right hand corner on this car. Other cars it might be in a different area in the trunk. So you might want to search around back there and just disconnect the negative battery terminal on there, and you should be fine. Okay, so on here what we're going to do is take these covers off. I already kind of undid them over there. A 10mm socket. Panels come off. Take all this stuff off here. Okay, next we'll take this cover off. And then also, there's these little covers right here you want to take off. You can use a little pocket screwdriver, kind of pry them, pop them up so you can access these E-Torques right here. And you want to take this whole bar off right here. When taking this cover off on some of these, there's some vacuum lines right here. Disconnect them first. This car doesn't have it, but disconnect them first. There's a vacuum reservoir attached to the underside of here. A lot of times when people pull this up, it snaps the nipple on there, and then, well, you'll be buying a new cover basically, because they're hard to glue back on and repair. Alright, those bolts in the back there, take an E-Torques 18. Next we're going to take off the fuel rail. So you're going to need a 17 wrench and also a 14 wrench. And for the clamp for the fuel rail is an E-Torques 8. And what you want to do is you want to crack the main line in the back over there first to bleed the pressure out. Because if you crack the lines at the injectors, that fuel will leak into the spark plug holes and all that area, and it's a little harder to clean up. Some will leak in there anyway, but you don't want to drench all that stuff. So it's easier if you put a rag over that, especially if the car is warm. You want to let it cool down for at least an hour so the pressures will lower. the T30. Alright, on the back you want to take the vacuum pump off. It's back there. It takes a Torx bit T40. And I use a little ratchet, mini ratchet. Torx 10. I'm replacing the valve cover on this one, but you want to do it in a star pattern, kind of like a spiral from outside in when you're loosening them to evenly distribute the tension on the valve cover. And the opposite applies when you tighten it, from the inside out, kind of like a spiral. Hand tight at first, and then go back and snug it all real tight. Alright, so this one, normally on lower mileage, from like up to 60 to 80-ish, you could probably reuse the valve cover. It is plastic, so around that mileage, when we bolted them back down, we have seen them crack before and they come back. But if you want to try to attempt to replace just the gasket, you can get the gasket kit for this. Also remember to get the eccentric shaft actuator gasket as well. It doesn't come in the kit. Most of the other ones do. Yeah, on this car it has high mileage, so I'm going to replace the valve cover. I'm not going to take any risks here. And the leak that this one had is pretty big, so I suspect there's a micro crack where it was leaking. And I'm sure if I bolted it back down, that thing would just split wide open, so I don't want to have to do this job twice. Also, you want to clean the perimeter with a nice, very clean, lint-free rag. All the bonding surface where it is going to be bolted down of all the dirt and things like that. And right now it gives you a really good chance to look around in there. It's pretty neat. You have your variable timing units right here, your variable valve lift system right here, and your Valvetronic actuator right here with the little gear teeth in there. You can't really see it, but if you look in there, you'll see it. Pretty cool. Gives you a good chance to make sure nothing's going on in there crazy. Alright guys, I'm going back together here. I cleaned my perimeter of all any dirt or any debris, things like that. And I have the new valve cover that comes with the gasket already in it. And one thing I forgot to mention is if you're not replacing the whole valve cover and just the gasket, then you're going to want to replace also this big gasket O-ring right here, which is for the vacuum pump that you took off earlier. And don't bypass it because it is a big leaking point, and a lot of times it actually leaks. It's the first thing to leak on these, so you definitely want to replace that. And I'm lucky because it comes with a whole valve cover in this case. So when you're going back on with this thing, if it's teetering a lot in like in the center somewhere and it's rocking and you can't get it seated, it might be hung up on something, like the gasket might be rolled or pinched or something. You definitely want to get a mirror and a flashlight and look at the perimeter of everything before you start snugging things down, because it's real easy to pinch a gasket in here or roll a gasket, or and that's the last thing you want. Obviously you're going to be pretty frustrated later when you drive it and you see smoke coming because it's leaking on the exhaust. It's happened to me a couple times, and it can happen to you, so just warning you. And then when we tighten this thing, we want to just very lightly just hand tight all of them and slowly go in a spiral from the center out, and keep going back and back and back until you're tightening more and more and more and more. You really want to evenly tighten this thing down, especially if you're reusing the valve cover, because believe me, it can crack real easy. So just be very gentle. No electric tools on here, all by hand, and it's definitely worth a little extra time on it. Guys, another tip on these, it's a good idea to replace the oil filler cap. A lot of people will mistake a valve cover leaking, and in reality it's actually just the oil filter cap. They made these things kind of cheap on this model. For some reason they leak a lot. Every time I do this job, I automatically just throw this in the estimate. It's not that expensive, and it could save you from a comeback. I've seen it come back before on other guys. So it's just one of those precaution things. Just throw it in your estimate. If not, then just eat it. You know, it's just a few bucks, so it's good to do. If it's your own car too, you know. These little metal tabs in here that hold it down, they just get weak and it loses its bond, and you know, obviously then oil comes out. So it's always a good idea when going back with things like this to lightly lube before you put it back in, just so you don't gall the seal, and it makes things a little easier for you. And this pump, you don't want to play around with this stuff and spin it, even though it might be tempting, because when you go back in, it could be a little harder for you to index getting it in there. But you can wiggle it around and you'll get it. Okay guys, very important when you're tightening these injector nuts back on, these injector rails, you want to be very gentle when tightening them. Don't over torque them or anything. Just nice and snug, just kind of like how they were removed. Reason being is because they have a piezoelectric crystal inside on some of these injectors, and too much torque can actually break the element inside, and the injector is very long and it's plastic, so just take it easy. Too much torque will ruin them, so just take it easy on them. Just nice and gentle and just snug on all of them. And obviously when you start the car, it's a good idea to check for fuel leaks, because that system is under high pressure. Guys, I misrouted this positive cable right here. I thought it went above. It actually goes from underneath at the kind of the same angle as this one. There's a little detent, a little cutout for it. So just keep that in mind. Alright, let's connect the battery and start it up. It's going to run a little rough in the beginning, and it might set a check engine light so you can clear it with your code reader, just because of the air in the fuel lines. But it should stable out after a few seconds. Guys, I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. I would really appreciate it if you would please subscribe and like, and hopefully this video has helped you guys out a lot. So thanks again.